Hi there, welcome to Floating in Dreams. Today's video is going to be an overview of some older eyeshadow palettes that I wanted to go back to and ask ourselves the questions. Are these gems? Are they junk? And were these worth revisiting? To everybody watching today, thank you so very much for joining me. This video is all about 6 eyeshadow palettes that I went back to in the month of November. I didn't quite manage to create all of the looks within the time frame, so I had to switch around some of the content. I'm filming this like a day late, but we're all here, we're all good. I have 6 palettes to chat with you about, so let's just get to it. But if anybody is new here and you've never seen one of my videos, it may be good to know who I am and what I like doing on this channel. My name is Meesha, I live in the Netherlands, I have fair skin with a cool to neutral undertone, and this greatly influences how I feel about makeup. I have been reviewing makeup for more than a decade. I love talking about eyeshadow palettes, essence and Catrice, and getting the use out of my makeup, so if that's something you're interested in, I hope you would like to stick around. Alright, so I'm filming this on my day off, so I'm looking a little bit like a mess because I already went out for the day, so my makeup has been on for a few hours. Usually I like do my makeup and film the videos and then I go out, but this morning I had another appointment and I actually spent about an hour riding my bike in pretty cold weather, so I feel like my nose is a little red and I have sort of like teary eyes. So if the makeup isn't perfect anymore, I do apologize, but that's what we're dealing with. It's turned into winter like overnight over here, and we've had frost for the first time in this winter. So we're getting into the wintry atmospheres, but I still had a couple of like more fall-like color stories to talk about in this roundup. So like I said, we have 6 eyeshadow palettes that I wanted to try again. In case you are curious how I select these, or if you want to know what is going on in these videos, I recommend you watch my Shop My Stashes, because I always show you what palettes I go for in that video, and that one always goes live somewhere at the start of a new month, usually on Tuesdays. That's when I like doing my Shop My Stashes. So let me start with what's on my eyes today. This is the last palette I tried again, because I have a bunch of these older Zoeva palettes, in case you're unfamiliar. This is the Zoeva Cocoa Blend with the nice shiny packaging. And this was the Zoeva answer to the chocolate bar hype that we had around like 2015, 2016. And they did a whole range of these, this really nice, slim, sleek design. I still have all of mine, and in the past few months, ever since I started doing this series, I think I have included a Zoeva palette in almost every single one of them, and it is my aim to eventually go through all of them, keep the ones that I love most, and maybe get rid of some of the ones I don't like. So far, I haven't come across one that I don't like, including this one, because this Cocoa Blend one looks like it's perhaps going to be a little bit dark and warm-toned and not quite up my street, but I feel that this palette predates the incredibly warm-toned craze that we had in 2016. That is, however, when this color story started to pick up steam over on YouTube and within the beauty community at large. I also think that that was around the time that Zoeva started to appear in Ulta, and we had more international like beauty influencers talking about the brand for a while there. They were in some Ipsy bags and things like that. But this palette was the one that everybody was raving about. Sadly, no longer available, as I've just explained to you. Zoeva does still do eyeshadow palettes, but they're not doing these ones anymore that I have in most of these videos. And this is overall a fairly neutral toned color story. We have a couple of cool tones, we have some warmer shimmers in here, but it's not like super orange leaning. And I'll be inserting some of the looks that I did with these as we're talking about each one. I did one look with each one of these palettes just to go back to it. These mattes are still super blendable and easy to work with. The shimmers still have enough impact. This was pre-super metallic shimmer, flaky things that we see a lot of indie brands do nowadays. This palette by Zoeva doesn't happen to have any duochromes, but a lot of their other older palettes in this line did, which is why I've always liked them. I'm currently wearing this on my eyes. I started off the look with this like orangey tone. This is all over the lid. I use this to deepen up the outer V, and I think what I did on the lower lash line was a bit of this with a bit of this, I think. I know this is on the lower lash line, and then this is in my inner corner. So we did a little bit of everything that this palette has to offer and some of the deeper tones, and I just feel that this looks like a very pretty blended look. It doesn't look as red in this lighting because we have very bright, nice, cold weather today. So I feel that my lighting today is perhaps a little bit like overexposed, but I kind of like that. And since I mentioned I've already been out, so it's no longer perfect. I think it's a little creased. Whenever it gets to these kind of temperatures and I ride my bike outside, my eyes start to tear up really, really terribly, which leads to like most of my eye makeup disappearing within like the first 30 minutes that I'm out the door. But I didn't feel like touching it up before I sat down to film this video. I'm keeping it real, you guys. I'm keeping it real. We have, next up, the Etude Autumn Closet, and this is a palette I only tried this year, and it was one of my favorite picks in all of the K-Beauty palettes that I tried over summer. In case you didn't know, I did a couple of trials with a lot of K-Beauty stuff over the summertime. I did an entire week dedicated to nothing but K-Beauty. I did a BB cream review, I did a lip stain review, I did a review of a bunch of K-Beauty eyeshadow palettes. So make sure to link any of those videos down below so that you can go back to them and see what my favorites are. But this one was one that was particularly successful, and because it was called Autumn Closet, I was like, you know what? I want to try that for autumn. And this is just, you know, your very neutral sort of basic palette. And because a lot of the things I had selected were quite dark and sultry looking, I was like, I do want something in there that's very wearable and easy to put on for work, because with some of these I knew it was going to take a little bit more brain power in order to get the look to come together because they're just more intense shadows. And this was just quick and easy. Of course I went for the usual suspects because I love my cool tones. So I went in with some of this and some of this here on the end. This is my favorite shimmer in the entire palette. I love how this has like a subtle green undertone. I just really, really enjoy that. But it's got some really stunning neutrals in here. If you do like a little bit more of a warm tone, it even has that. But with K-Beauty, warm tones are everywhere, and it is very difficult within K-Beauty to find cooler things. They do some, but that's what I've been trying to really get my hands on. And this has been a stunning one, and I really like it. Really blendable formula, very successful look. It is very easy to wear, though. This is not like, you know, in terms of like eyeshadow, like if you really love your indie eyeshadows, this is not going to be for you because it's just not going to have the payoff like with the Zoeva. It's just not going to be for you. But if you like really blendable mattes and shimmers that are impactful, but that don't look necessarily like you fell into a pool of glitter, then these eyeshadows can be for you. Then a palette I desperately wanted to get some more use out of because my Sydney Grace and Temptalia collab palettes were nice. I really enjoy the quality because Sydney Grace is one of my favorite indie brands when it comes to pan singles. But the palettes I'm usually not the biggest fan of. A lot of the color stories don't quite come together for me. And with the Temptalia collab, I sort of had a similar vibe with this. This is the Quintessence, if I'm not mistaken, yes. And the reason why I wanted to reach for this is because it has a couple of really stunning shades. I ended up doing what I usually end up doing with this palette, which is the taupe with some of the teals that are down here. So these are my 5 favorite shades. The rest feel a little bit random to me in this color story. However, I do have all 3 that came in this collection, and I do feel that the 3 palettes together mix and match really well. But yeah, this has some really stunning shades. And I really, for instance, this shimmer is really nice as well. But I ended up going for something a little bit more taupey with a pop of teal kind of vibe. And that worked out really well. This is the light version, I think, or is it the deep? No, this is the deep version. The deep version. Because I remember in the light version, this wasn't taupe. It was more of like a light gray. And I don't like light grays, but I do really enjoy a taupe. So I did get the light version in the other 2, but this one is the deep version. And I really enjoy this. I believe that these were now discontinued last summer, so you can no longer find it. They were around for about a year or 2, and I do really enjoy the quality, but the color stories, like I mentioned. I will definitely go back to this again. I think the taupe with the teal accent is what I'm going to be using this palette for in the future. And then a palette that I hadn't used in such a long time, And it's one that color story wise just fits the fall vibes so well. Again, I don't think you can still buy this. And I don't think I would recommend you buy it if you were still able to buy it, because this brand is a little bit like, I wouldn't call them shady necessarily, but it can be difficult to place an order and if there's a problem to get them to respond to you. So even if you can still get the Meesha Witchcraft, I don't think I would necessarily recommend it because I've heard a lot of people having bad experiences. My experiences have been fine. I've ordered from them twice because I also own the Fawn, which is their more neutral one. If you already look at the website, that there's quite a lot of like spelling errors and stuff, so it doesn't look like a super professional website from that perspective. But they did do some really nice makeup. It just seems that if you can buy something right now, I've heard that they're not even like sending out orders. So buyer beware with this one if you can still get your hands on it. If you don't, I don't think you're missing out on much, because I think that where color stories are right now, they have kind of surpassed this one in terms of quality, in terms of color selection as well. But I was actually quite surprised when I was using it, because it looks like a very dark, warm-toned leaning palette. And I felt it looked a lot more wearable once I applied it to my eyes than what I had expected from this. So I felt it didn't look as grungy as it looks in the pan. And it could be because of the packaging that it just looks a little bit more interesting than it actually is. This shimmer is my favorite. That's the one that I'm wearing all over my lid. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I used one of these two. I think it was this one actually, as a crease shade, and these reddish tone browns have a lot of plum running through them. So they actually pull a lot more cool toned than you might expect. Then I used some of these like deeper green shades as liner on the lower lash line to clash it just a little bit. And I think I actually used the white, which has a green flip, in the inner corner. Overall, a really nice palette. I still really enjoy this. This is not going to go anywhere anytime soon, but like I mentioned, I would not necessarily recommend it if you don't own this yet, and you're seeing this for the first time and you think, I want to hunt that down and try and find it. I don't think that there are just better color stories out on the market by now. I'm very happy that I have it, but if you look into like an Unearthly or a Fantasy Cosmetica, those kind of brands will have something that's quite similar to this, but with a much more like 2023 kind of formula. Speaking of a formula that I think it has gotten a little bit outdated, I'm terribly sorry to say it because they just brought this back and you can still buy it, but it's the Melt Muerte. As much as I love it, I went into this and did my favorite look with it once again, which is the Navy Smoky Eye. All I need from this palette are these two shades, really. That's all I reach for, really. But I really enjoy the color story of this. Melt was so far ahead of its time when they launched this, and they just really struggled keeping it in stock. And when I went onto the Melt website for like Black Friday to see what their deals were like, I saw this still on there, so you can get it. However, it could just be that because I've had mine since it first launched, or just because it is a slightly older formula, that I don't feel this is necessarily performing the way I remember it performing. These felt quite dry, and I don't remember it being that dry. They were still smooth, they were still easy to work with. They don't smell funky, like there's no mold in any of these. I can still use these perfectly fine. But I think that these shadows are just starting to age a little bit, and that the binding ingredients are starting to deteriorate. That usually happens when eyeshadow gets a little bit older. That doesn't mean you can no longer use it. It just means you have to be extra careful with fallout. And with shades this intense, you have to be very careful. But once on the lids with a primer, it stayed all day. I wore the look to work, and it was perfectly fine. It didn't give me an eye infection. There was nothing wrong with it. But I do think that if you were still interested in this one currently, if you buy it now, I do hope it's one that's like freshly produced. So I hope the shadows don't have that issue for you when you buy it new nowadays. But I do think that maybe if you have this for a while, that it could also go that route. Just saying. And finally, my Pat McGrath Moonlit Seduction. And I wanted to go back to this because I hadn't really used it ever since I used it for my review. And I bought this in Black Friday, I think last year, and I reviewed it earlier in the year. And I decided to keep this over something like the Divine Rose 1. It's much more cool toned than the Divine Rose 1. That one leans very warm toned, but also this has quite a bit of warmth, I'm not gonna lie. I do really enjoy this. We get this like plummy thing. This peach is a little bit more pinky plum than what you got in the Divine Rose 1. That was like a straight up warm peach. I really enjoy these two shades. This shade as well. I think the look I did, I put this in the inner, in the crease, this all over the lid, topped a little bit of this shade all over it, and then I think I used a little bit of this in the inner, or maybe this in the inner corner, or something like that. Maybe use this as liner, or something like that. This leans fair enough. You get 3 really gorgeous mattes. Everything else has shimmer. I do really enjoy this. I enjoy the Pat McGrath formula, but this has confirmed for me that it was a good decision to get rid of my Divine Rose 1, and that keeping this one over that one was just the successful decision that I had to take. So yeah, this is definitely going to be making an appearance again later this winter, I think, because I think it's also going to be really pretty for like January, February. I think the way these shadows work, especially the special ones, I don't want to call them special shades because they're no longer as special as they used to be, but the Pat McGrath special shadows have a certain sparkle to them that really does well if you're in low light settings. So this is not the kind of palette I would reach for in like the spring summer season when we have a lot of bright light coming in, but especially if you're like doing like candlelit dinners and like around Christmas time, this is an especially great palette because that's when the sparkle and the beauty that these shadows have really shines. So I think that this is a great palette, but more so for like the festive season. So there we have it. Those were all of the palettes that I went back to in November. I will be going back to some more palettes in December, but I have already had a look at my planning, and the way things seem right now, I will not be able to include that eyeshadow palette revisit video within the month of December because I will just be way too busy filming and uploading all of my end of year favorites. So I think I'm going to be moving it into like the start of January somewhere. That's when I will update you on how I feel about some eyeshadow palettes that I went back to, because I will not have time to post that video anywhere within like the last week of December, which is how it usually plays out for me, that I try them towards the end of the month and then I can sit down to film the video. So yeah, that's what I have in store for you very, very soon. I will be back with a new video very soon, so if you'd like to stay tuned for more. In the meantime, you could thumbs up this video because it would greatly help me out, or subscribe if you want to see more by me. And for now, I would like to wish you a very pleasant day. I hope you have a good one, and then I hope to see you in my next video. Bye-bye!